Good evening. The time is 7:36. I apologize for starting just a few minutes late. But this is the public hearing and regular business meeting of the Mayor and Council for the City of Snellville, Georgia for Monday, June the 10th, 2019. The meeting has been called to order and we do have a quorum present. And we'll start with an invocation from our Economic Development Manager, Eric Van Otteren, and then he'll lead us in the pledge.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we ask you to join us in this time as we gather, Lord, to do the business of the city of Snellville. We seek your wisdom, Lord, in the decisions that we make, your peace and kindness in those decisions that we press upon others. Father, we rejoice in the gift of your Son to this world. And Father, we just ask you to be with us this time. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Eric. And now we'll move on to our approving of the minutes. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes of the May 13th, 2019, May 21st, 2019, and May 29th, 2019 meetings.
There's a motion and there's a second by Todd Warner. All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. That is 6 in favor and none opposed. Okay, tonight we have no invited guests. We do have some committee and department reports. First, we have our Planning Commission report by Mr. Bill Kingsbury.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First, I want to thank you all for giving us a full Planning Commission. It has been I think it's been over a year, so we greatly appreciate the appointments and those who are serving as well. You all have been concerned about the education and what the Planning Commission needs to address, and we have started an education program led by our Planning Director, Jason Thompson, and we are, at our last meeting, we only had one item that took 15 minutes, and we spent the rest of the time talking about education, getting to know each person on it, because unlike you, we only see each other once a month. So we took some time to find out each person's background and their interest. We greatly appreciate Councilperson Schultz for attending, and Mayor, I know you've attended, and we greatly appreciate that, as does all the members of the Planning Commission. Tonight, we are reporting on SUP 19-03, CUP, 1903, and that's essentially gas pumps at Sam's. 6 stations, 12 pumps, 6 pumps, 12 stations. We did agree with the staff report. What stood out to me was a condition requiring the landscaping of the area, and the variance that staff recommended was a reduction in parking. A few years ago that would sound ridiculous, but we all know that the box stores are not attracting the number of customers all at once that they once did. So it is a good use of space in those large parking lots. Many of the other items on your agenda tonight are related to items that came through the Planning Commission, and if you have any questions at the appropriate time on those, I'd be more than happy to take them. Are there any questions now?
Any questions for Mr. Kingsbury? Thank you, Bill. We appreciate your service. Next, we have an update from the Downtown Development Authority from the Chair, Don Britt.
Well, good evening. Pretty eventful month. So on this past May 29th, we got the bond issue completed, got the cobblestone development closed. Prior to that, we had hired a property manager and our maintenance personnel and got them in place. Our property manager has actually been involved with that facility for the past 29 years, so it's been very, very helpful in this transition. Just like when you buy anything, the first 10 days are always the fun. So we've had a little fun to deal with some things breaking, you having to have some repairs done, but everything is going well. We had a meet and greet with all the tenants we invited all the tenants, not all of them came, but some did, for breakfast last Thursday morning. And Mr. Kingsbury and I actually walked the development on the 29th and met a few tenants and starting to introduce ourselves to them as we go forward. Big thing is I just want to thank the board that we have. They've worked really well together through this process. I also want to thank Mr. Van Otter and Mr. Sanders for helping guide us through a lot of things. They've answered a lot of questions when this needed to happen. And also this Thursday, we have our mid-year planning session with all the boards here in Snellville. So, any questions for me?
Any questions for Mr. Britt?
Thank you.
Thank you, Don. We had on our agenda an update from Public Works on the stormwater and resurfacing programs, but our overhead projector is not working. So we'll postpone that until our next meeting until the projector is working. Next, we will have the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve tonight's agenda, June 10th, 2019.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Who is that, Dave? There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. That is 6 in favor and none opposed. Next, we have several items on our public hearing agenda tonight. I do know there's some new faces in the room and you may not be familiar with our public hearing process, so I thought I'd just run down with that real quick so that everybody kind of gets the flow of what's happening. The first couple of items are first reads, which are, this is the first time the mayor and council is actually looking at a project, not necessarily the first time, but first time it's on our agenda. We do 2 readings for any rezonings. This first read is procedural. We don't have any discussion. It'll be waived and moved to our next meeting, which will be July 8th, for the second reading, final vote, and again, another public hearing that the public can make comment on. On our second read items, we have 3 of them tonight. Typically, the way the flow of those go is our planning director, Jason Thompson, will give a presentation of the project. Then the applicant may come up and talk about their project. And then we will open the floor to public comment. And there will be some question and answer time potentially from council members for either the planning director or the applicant. Then we will open the floor to public comment. Anyone here that would like to speak about the project, either for or against, may approach the podium. You'll need to give your name and address for the record, and then you may state your comment, question, or concern regarding the project. After the public hearing, we will close the public portion of that hearing and then allow the applicant or the planning director to respond to any of the questions or concerns that came up. And then we will open the council floor up here for a motion and a vote. So that's the way the public hearing works. I do ask that if you do want to make a comment, there is a sign-up sheet in the back, but you did not need to sign up on that sheet if you want to come and speak at the public hearing. That sign-up is really for the end of the meeting, and you don't even really need to sign up for that either. At the very end of the meeting, we allow for public comment as well, that you can come up for 5 minutes and talk about any issue that you may have in the city. It's not related to one zoning topic or another. So that's just a little bit about the process, just so everybody's got an understanding of that. And with that, we will open the public hearing. We have item A, first reading, ZOA 19-03, consideration and recommendation on a text amendment to section 6.2, definitions, and section 9.10, BG district regulations of the Snellville zoning ordinance, and Article 6, motels, hotels, extended stay hotels of Chapter 22, businesses of the City Code of Snellville. This is a first reading. Is there a motion?
Motion to waive ZOA 19-03 and place it on the agenda for July 8th, 2019, for a second reading.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is 6 in favor and none opposed. Next, we have item B, first reading CUP 19-03, consideration and action on application by Sam's Real Estate Business Trust for a conditional use permit and request for variances. I'm sorry, I activated Siri up here. I'm getting read back to by Siri. Okay, where was I? Consideration and action on application by Sam's Real Estate Business Trust for a conditional use permit and request for variances from the zoning ordinance for a Sam's Club Fuel Center on property zoned BG General Business District at 1520 Scenic Highway North, Snellville, Georgia. Is there a motion?
Motion to waive the first reading of CUP 19-03 and place it on the agenda of the July 9th meeting for a second reading.
July 8th.
July 8th.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion. You got to be quick, Todd. You want a second up here, you got to be quick. There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. That is 6 in favor and none opposed. Okay, item C, we have a second reading, CUP 19-02, consideration and action on application by Mount Zion Baptist Church of Snellville for a conditional special use permit for a place of worship for a 16.06 acre tract of the 22.75 acre church campus zoned RS 180 Single Family Residence District at 1525 Scenic Highway, Snellville, Georgia, tax parcel 5073002. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, and I'll go ahead and just apologize in advance. Most of these presentations are pretty have a lot of illustrations and maps to kind of drive in the details of the case. I'll try to take extra care to just kind of read through those so everyone can understand. But the first case we have here, CUP 1902, is pretty standard request for a conditional or a special use for an existing place of worship by Mount Zion Baptist Church, which I'm sure everybody's aware of, is on north of Highway 124 in the northern border of the city. They've requested this conditional use permit to bring their property into conformance with the current codes to allow them to escape the grandfathering provision, and also the main objective of the request is to be allowed monument signage for their property. Currently, as the ordinance is written, residentially zoned properties without a conditional use permit are not allowed a monument type sign unless it's a neighborhood or subdivision. So their main aim here was to bring the property into conformance and then be allowed a single monument sign on 124. They've met the requirements the city has placed over a couple years ago for acreage and activity requirements, and we recommend approval of the CUP with our standard list of conditions. The application also went before the Planning Commission, and they recommended approval as well.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Is the applicant here?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Lee Tucker with the law firm Happy Pickens Tucker LLP here on behalf of the church. With me is Scott Crow. We agree with the staff recommendation and the Planning Commission recommendation up to you and ask that you approve this conditional use permit, which would, as Jason said, allow Mount Zion to construct a new monument sign out on Scenic Highway. Happy to answer any questions, but that's our request, and I'd like to reserve the balance for rebuttal.
Any questions of Mayor and Council for Mr. Tucker or Mr. Thompson? No questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Tucker. Now, this is a public hearing, so we will open the floor to public comment. If anyone would like to come and speak either for or against this conditional use permit, please step forward and state your name and address for the record. Seeing no comments from the public, we will close the public hearing and go for a motion.
Motion to approve CUP 19-02 with reference to ordinance 2019-11.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve. Any further comments by council? No? Then we'll call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. That is 6 in favor and none opposed. That motion carries. Next item, we have item D, second reading, RZ 19-03, consideration and action on application by Swope and DeThomas Investment Group LLC and Jimmy Johnson requesting to rezone the property from BG General Business District to BG General Business District with conditions and variances for a .612 acre tract, it's tract 3 of the 0.65 acre property, 2180 Scenic Highway, Snellville, Georgia. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. This one may be a little more convoluted without pictures, but if everyone's aware of the property and the properties that are involved, we're at the corner of Oak and 124. There's a vacant property adjacent to where the applicant's property is now. It has a Snellville garage, I believe, is there, an upholstery shop, fast signs, and that's the property that we're dealing with. But in order to deal with that property, we have to understand kind of how we got there. So there was a proposal for a permitted use on the corner of a retail or a car wash. And in order to make that property work, they have to share or take a little bit of the property from Mr. Johnson's tract. In order to do that, they have to remove one building, which would be the Snellville garage, and the city made a determination that removing one building is basically removing the grandfathering provision that it has on the property, that they're allowed to operate without being in code compliance, seeing that the buildings were erected sometime in the early 70s before most of our modern codes exist. In that case, they have to bring everything up to code. So what they're here to do is to ask for variances and to also improve the property to a point where it's substantially in compliance with current codes but cannot necessarily conform to those due to the location of the building or a setback that was different than it is now. So what we have is they've requested this change in conditions, or basically a BG zoning to a BG zoning with conditions, which ultimately result in variances from the code for several different items, and I'll just kind of read through those quickly so we know what we're talking about. But they basically want to be allowed for the parking lot design and landscaping and lot dimensions in general accordance with the submitted survey or site plan. They want to be able to allow the amount of impervious surface ground coverage as depicted on the site plan. Basically, whatever is there will stay. They want to allow encroachments into the North Road and Scenic Highway building setbacks as depicted on the site plan. I believe there's some small encroachments on the side, and I think they're okay on the front and maybe a little bit on the rear. They want to be allowed to eliminate any internal landscape strip that would be created by a property line between them and the new development, and eliminate any new tree density requirements which would require plantings that aren't currently there and don't currently have a place for. They've also, part of this package or this application was to retrofit or to approve the existing building, to have it be harmonious with the new development that's coming, and the applicant has submitted a design that modifies and basically enhances the building to add bricks, some stone or some bricks, some ephes, and then some accents with paint and colors to bring it more into code compliance, which would be pretty close to what we would require today. They've done pretty much all you can with a building that was built in the 1970s, and they've asked to be able to replace the existing pylon sign with the same height and sign face dimensions on the property, which is already there. Basically cut the pole, put it on the ground, and reduce the parking spaces in order to fit what is required for just their property. And they can continue to use septic facilities there, which aren't currently allowed in new codes. And basically anything that we missed that was small or tedious, that they be allowed to basically submit the plan as presented and continue that use in a conforming fashion, whereas they're not non-conforming and grandfathered. They're allowed to continue on as long as it continues in that state. But is there anything, Tony, you'd like to add about just kind of the legalities of it or anything? Is that pretty good?
No, I think you covered it perfectly. What you're saying about that is significant to the architectural improvement.
Right.
Jason, we were just talking.
Okay.
Just to clarify. There is a sign requirement that is part of the construction that goes on the corner, sort of town center entrance. I know it's shown on the site plan is what makes it a requirement. Where else in the approval is that getting
That's
incorporated?
actually part of the development agreement that was made for the issuance of that LDP for the soon-to-be car wash on the corner. Seeing that property is not subject to this rezoning, can't necessarily add conditions that directly affect it. But what we did do in compliance or concurrence with the applicants on that one was they submitted to us a letter with all of these exhibits, as well as basically a synopsis of what they're going to be required to do in order to receive that LDP. We agreed, and the city manager responded in an appropriate fashion that we agreed with that, and so basically the development agreement is in place, and the sign is part of that development agreement. So all those variances that we basically went over, we recommended approval for those because the subdivision of the property is what's creating, a stress on the code. The uses will continue on. They'll be improved, and we'll lose the old building. So there'll be some demolition too that cleans the corner up, and then there will be a new car wash there on the corner. So we've referenced the conditions in the ordinance that went out earlier today, that they have the correct, basically, that we have the correct site plan, all those different exhibits, the elevations, the building materials, and all of that are tied to the ordinance that was sent out, and that's being proposed for approval.
Okay, and is the applicant here? I'm sorry, is there any questions of council for Mr. Thompson? No?
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted you to state for the audience, just so they're certain, because I've had some concerns about this, or I have had some residents speak to me about concerns about this. That property is already zoned for a car wash. There isn't really anything we can do about that, correct?
No, the zoning is appropriate. The legal issues come is when they take the extra piece, and that's been something that we've been working through close, maybe 6-8 months, trying to figure everything out, and the compromise was kind of where we're at now, instead of forcing it into a judicial decision.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Tucker.
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. Lee Tucker, 1550 North Brown Road, Suite 125, Lawrenceville. Here on behalf of Mr. Johnson and then also Mr. DeThomas, the developer. I think Jason did a good job of summarizing this. It's definitely been a collaborative effort to try to utilize the property and at the same time help the city enhance the aesthetics of an entry corner. And so that Snellville signage is a part of the land disturbance permit, has been agreed. With respect to this property, we need to retain the building in order to generate income to pay Mr. Johnson, the benefit of his life's work over there for 50-plus years. And so what we're trying to do there is to be a good citizen and acknowledge what y'all are doing, enhance the building materials, and hopefully, over time, as that area continues to gentrify and change, there might be further opportunity. We're demoing one of the two buildings out there, the one that says Grayson Automotive on it that kind of faces out towards Scenic Highway today. So the building that's perpendicular between Scenic and North is the building that would stay, and it's up against the property line. But otherwise, we think the infrastructure and ingress egress will be enhanced by virtue of these improvements. The corner that is not subject to your zoning will have to comply with all your development regulations and things of that nature. So this just relates to Mr. Johnson's property and the building that would stay on the corner. And if you all approve this, then we'll be able to move forward with that transaction and allow him to move into retirement. So we'd ask you to send it up or to approve it with the planning department, with Jason's recommendation and the planning commission recommendation of approval. We don't have any comments or concerns to those conditions. We agreed with them. Happy to answer questions.
Any questions for Mr. Tucker?
Yes. I understand that this is zoned commercially already and for a car wash, and that you've offered numerous modifications and architectural improvements. However, I think many of us are considering the fact that this is, of course, going to be a key entry point to our new town center development. And this is such an incredible opportunity for a vibrant, unique, dynamic business to be on this corner. And that's not necessarily how I describe a car wash.
Right.
Could you speak
Sure.
as to how you
Sure.
arrived at this decision?
Sure. So my clients own the corner. So the corner is not subject to zoning, but to answer your question, my clients owned that property for several years, demoed the gas station that was there, remediated the underground storage tanks, cleaned up the site, and has been actively marketing it for a period of years. Unfortunately, we have not been able to secure a different user on the site, and so in an effort to, he's in the land development and selling business, and so because it's an allowed use, he struck a deal with the car wash operator. I think that many at the city could acknowledge his collaboration with the city and various sites and efforts to put this property into production for a different use. I think it's fair to say that he has tried really, really hard, but at the end of the day, it's a commercial corner at Oak and Scenic Highway, and it's zoned for a variety of uses, and this is one of those that's allowed by right. And so as an accommodation to that and an acknowledgement as to the city, your concerns are very legitimate. He's agreed to do several things there that are not otherwise required by the ordinance. For example, putting monument sign fit out there and paying for that. Enhancing building materials on another piece of property, working with the design guidelines on the building that's not subject to zoning. And so at the end of the day, while I can certainly agree that a car wash is what a car wash is, at the end of the day, I think that the city, if you all elect to approve this, I think that you will have done a good job by your constituents because you're taking an opportunity to work with someone and accommodate a longstanding property owner as well in Mr. Johnson. So that's the honest answer about it. So it's about right use. So I guess I would say to finalize that, by denying this doesn't change the use on the corner. They're two separate issues. The corner is what the corner is. This is about Mr. Johnson.
Any other questions for Mr. Tucker? No. Thank you, Mr. Tucker.
Thank you for your consideration.
This is a public hearing, so we will open the floor to public comment. If anyone would like to come and speak either for or against this rezoning with variances and conditions, please step forward and give your name and address for the record.
Marcy Ferris, 1749 Ridgedale Drive. It seems to me that this developer has worked with the city, has made concessions, and we don't want to just leave that as a commercial corner. And then we need a car wash. So I think we should follow our ordinances and approve it.
Thank you, Ms. Ferris.
Good evening, council members. My name is Dr. Louisa Pollard, 1535 Timberline Trace, right here in Snellville. I do understand that there has been accommodations done, that this is a zoning, but I want to go on the record and agree with Ms. Linsky, the council member, that we are striving for and looking forward to the aesthetics and beautification of the city of Snellville. And having a car wash, I don't care. You know, it's like saying a cow is a cow, and no matter how you disguise it, it's still a cow. And no matter how you disguise it, how aesthetically beautiful, and how much the owners and the zoning is, this will be a great detriment to our city to have to come in. Not only will it generate a lot of traffic, as car washes usually do, but it will be a detriment to the plans that have been poured forward to beautify the city of Snellville. So as a citizen of the city, I'm truly against this. Thank you for the opportunity to make a comment.
Thank you, ma'am. And I do just want to clarify again what Mr. Tucker said, that we are not voting on zoning for a car wash or not. The car wash is allowed, and we have no way to change that. But I appreciate your comments, and the applicant has heard you. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Bobby Howard, 2240 Pinehurst Road, Snellville, Georgia. Ms. Linsky, I certainly know where you are in your chair sitting there, because I've sat in that chair over there. At the end of the day, we've got somebody that has poured their heart into the city with Park Place, with the developments that they can have done and shown of every opportunity to work with the city to do this. That whole strip right there is not in the town center overlay. It is not. And to have an idea that we're going to crush a property owner's rights to what he can do with it, and we know what the aesthetic opportunities are to that corner, and right now we've got an empty lot with an old gas station and a gas station on the other side of it that is going to bookend that nice come through the door opportunity. But this is an opportunity that seems like we shouldn't pass up. You know, we have opportunities to do other stuff and to make other stuff better too. And this is an opportunity to make that corner better than what it is right now. And I get all that, but just at the end of the day, this is a property rights issue. And these two gentlemen that are doing this have the automatic and absolute right to do with what within the law to do with their piece of property. And the denial of that is going to be hard to swallow. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Is there anyone else that would like to speak for or against? Seeing no one else, I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve RZ 19-02 consideration and action of the application by Swope and Thomas Investment Group LLC and Jimmy Johnson requesting to rezone the property from BG General Business District to BG General Business District with conditions and variances for the .612 acre tract 3 of the 0.65 acre property at 2180 Scenic Highway, Snellville, Georgia, with the variances and conditions as put forth in the Planning Commission and Planning Department recommendation.
Mr. Warner, I believe you said CUP 19-02, and it should be CUP 19. It should be RZ
Oh, well,
19-03.
sorry about that. Well, you know, I get so nervous talking in public. Well, then let the record reflect that it is, I did get the rest of it right, though, right? Yes. Okay, all right. Well, I got 90%. It's still an A. Let's have it read RZ 19-03. Did I get it right? Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. I will allow if council members would like to opine before the vote.
If I may, Mayor. The issue that is before us really does not hinge at all upon the use on the corner, which is going to be a car wash. Nothing any of us have done could change that. Over the last 6 months, I had been otherwise engaged, been off the Planning Commission, and worked with council, trying to come up with ideas that might mitigate or bring another use to this property. Try to find a solution that would work for all parties, and it didn't work. And the gentlemen that own the property have every right to build anything that's allowed under the current zoning classification. And when I hear car wash, I think of the car washes that are not necessarily very attractive. They're kind of lean-tos, they're sheds, I wish our overhead was actually working so y'all could see the design of this car wash. Yes, it is still a car wash. It's not my favorite use for that corner, but that's my fault, that's our fault for not having put conditions in place years ago that would have protected that corner. But this car wash that's coming is a very unique and interesting architectural piece. It's not going to look like one of those spray and wash car washes. It is going to be, if a car wash could be a signature piece, it will be. And the property that we're rezoning tonight actually only allows better access in and out, which will help with traffic control. Since we can't stop the car wash from being built, then we have every obligation to you to make sure that it's as less of an impact, negative impact as possible. And by having this rezoning and allowing the adjacent property to be slightly developed, it will allow ingress and egress that wouldn't be there otherwise. We're going to have the car wash. Nothing any of us say or do will ever change that. So let's have the best dang car wash we can. And if Shotgun's here, Mr. Johnson, he's worked a long time in the facilities that are there, and I love him and salute him for that, but they're in need of a little bit of an upgrade. So not only are we making the ingress egress better on the car wash, but we're also having some buildings that front on 124 that are driven by 40,000 people a day. It will be improved. It'll be prettier, it'll be better. And by doing that, hopefully that will help bring the area up and spur redevelopment of that area even faster. So I would just ask for my fellow council members to please support this. Again, it's not going to stop a car wash. All it will do is make the car wash a little less good. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Any other council members?
I've been trying to think of what could be worse to put on the corner than a car wash and haven't come up with much. But at the same time, this becomes a property owner rights issue. And The applicant has agreed to do a lot of attractive landscaping, put up a sign in front. They have a right to develop it. As Todd said, we can't stop it. And I think the adjustments that we're going to vote on tonight will enhance that and make it the best possible situation we have, given the fact that the car wash is already approved for that location. So I think we've gotten a lot of cooperation from the developer, trying to make it as unobtrusive as possible. And again, at the end of the day, it's a property rights issue.
And I mean, essentially, I'm not going to repeat everything that Mr. Warner and Mr. Emmanuel have just said, but I mean, I feel the same way. And the property owner is here, and I've told him before, and I'll tell him right now in front of all of you, I don't like the idea of a car wash there either. When he first came, I said I hate it. But this is where we are. And I do appreciate, we have been, as Mr. Thompson alluded to, we have been talking about this and working on this for 6 to 8 months, probably is accurate time frame. And there's been a lot of give and take on this project. And so I do appreciate the developer's willingness to chip in and help make this project better, more palatable to all of us. And, you know, we're kind of where we are on this. And I do need to ask, before we take the final vote, the applicant, are you okay with the conditions and variances as they have been stated?
Yes, Mayor, we agree with the draft ordinance. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I will, we have a motion to approve with the variances and conditions as stated by the Planning Commission. All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. That is 5 in favor. Any opposed? 1 opposed. With that, the rezoning was approved. Next, we have item E, second reading, LUP 19-01 and RZ 19-02, consideration and action on applications by Patrick Malloy Companies, LLC, and Summit Chase Country Club, Inc., to amend this Snellville 2040 Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Map from Park Recreation to Residential Low Density. Official zoning map amendment from LM Light Manufacturing District and RS 180 Single Family Residence District to RHOP 55 SF Single Family Housing for Older Persons District, and variances for a 257 lot age restricted single family detached subdivision on a 75.288 acre site located near the intersection of Rosebud Road and Temple Johnson Road, Loganville, Georgia. Tax parcels 5093106, 5094161, and 5099180. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll go through this one a little slower since there's a lot of information to digest and kind of just repeat the facts again. But we're talking about the property that's currently located as part of Summit Chase Country Club and Golf Course. I believe it's the front 9 as depicted on the graphic up here. It's adjacent to the intersection of Temple Johnson and Rosebud Road. The colored parcels here on the front show basically the first phase with an additional, with 257 lots, with an additional up to 280 with a phase to the south there where the current tennis courts are. Once there's some title issues worked out, if approved, that would require and also another rezoning. But they're requesting, what the request is a land use plan amendment, which is currently configured as park and recreation to a low-density residential with a unit count of 3.4 units per acre, which fits into a low-density designation, which is 1 to 4. They've also requested to change the RS 180, which is a single-family residence, to RHOP residential housing for older persons for 257 detached homes, not quadplexes or duplexes, but detached homes. Typically, it's a smaller lot configuration, which is typical of what we see nowadays in senior developments and single-family developments as well. And the applicant is also requesting 2 variances. One is to be allowed a minimum side yard setback of 5, to basically have it just be 10 feet between houses, and they can push the houses to and fro the property lines in order to make it work, as long as there's 10 feet between them. And once again, it's 257 homes now. 280 would be the total impact in the future, with 2 planned gated entrances off of Rosebud Road that would have a personal security guard manning the gates. It would be gated in private streets. The HOA would be responsible for the stormwater and the streets and their maintenance. There will be 3 typical lot layouts with a 50, 60, and 70-foot wide width lot, and most would be 120 feet deep. And this would be the time that I would show some typical building elevations, but what you get is your typical kind of craftsman, brick, stone, fronts and sides, and then masonry siding, shakes, and accents along the other elevations. They've also, like I said, they requested those 2 variances as well. And when we look through the comprehensive plan, which was just recently adopted just a few months ago, we found some goals that directly support the application, and that's to expand housing opportunities for seniors to support a multi-generational community, pursue more development opportunities focused on seniors and assisted livings, and focus on reinforcing neighborhood stability by encouraging more home ownership and maintenance and upgrade or existing properties. The findings and recommendations of the 2040 Comprehensive Plan indicate that the development of this property is in compliance with the policies of the city. There is a traffic and burden on infrastructure. Those will be greatly reduced with private gated roads. There will be no taxpayer funds that go to maintain those roads, sidewalks, or infrastructures. The developments that are 55 age plus operate at non-traditional traffic peaks, and it's been indicated that almost 65% less trips per day are from senior oriented developments than regular single-family developments. There's little to no impact on the school system, and typically when you infuse new development among existing development, it will add value to the existing neighborhoods. So we just want to go over the variances one more time. So basically the separation will be from 5 to 10 feet measured at the foundations, and at least 45% of the units shall have a front facade composed of cedar shake, masonry brick water table, where the side and rear elevations shall be constructed of stained or painted cedar shake. 45 will have 30% brick, and 10% of the units will have 70% brick. And what this allows to do is to vary the elevations that are seen by the road, and also allow the buyers to decide what they want their home to look like. Most of the modern age building materials, the masonry siding, are pretty much ageless. It's not like your traditional wood siding that rots or vinyl that fades. It just requires minimal maintenance, which would be with any other home, painting and other things like that. So based on its compliance with the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance, we've recommended approval. And during this process, there were some concerns that were addressed between the applicant and the mayor and council during a special work session relating to mainly the buffer area, which is a 25-foot area that's shown kind of in green around the existing residential. Now, the code requires a 25-foot setback, not necessarily a buffer. The applicant has agreed to a buffer, and the applicant has also agreed to install a fence line a single 6-foot fence at the time that basically when they get started from lots, I believe it's 144 down to 121. And I'll repeat that, 144 down to 121 there. The same fencing material all installed at once and plant the buffer on the other side so it's established by the time they get to those homes. They will most likely start on the model park, which is the area down on the bottom left corner in green, and then work their way up as they go. So by the time they make it to those lots that most people are affected by, there'll be ample screening and plantings there to buffer them from the adjacent development. There was also some issues with the stormwater, knowing that Lower Johnson Lake has had some issues, and there's another dam right up from there that's, you know, probably needs some work as well. And where will all the water go? Well, due to federal and state and even local standards, every drop of water that comes off of that property has to be treated and detained to be released at least at the same rate as it is now. And most of the time, the codes are so stringent that it actually reduces the flow. So the detention pond, as proposed, will accommodate the water, treat it, and then release it based on which drainage basin it is down towards the lake, or there's another basin that's served on the southern side of Temple Johnson. But the applicant has also agreed to modify and enhance an existing stormwater structure, and I use that loosely, a pond on the golf course, to accommodate and treat even more water because of the concerns of the down lake issues. And as part of the application, the applicant will also, the development application will have to provide a hydro study that proves that they've done that, and there will be no ill harm down the road or down the stream. And that's done on every development in the city. That's not just for a neighborhood, that's done for a car wash, any of them that are they have to follow these strict stormwater issues. And I believe there were some concerns about how some of the lots backed up to the larger estate lots on the western portion of the property. The applicant agreed to kind of reconfigure the cul-de-sac to put the backs of the houses to the fronts of theirs to provide more screening, and then a little further discussion about removing the buffer on the northern end so that those homes in the white or the cream on the top are able to have views of what will be the golf course on the north end. So they won't have that buffer, and some, I'm sure, would prefer that. So there's been some conditions that were submitted earlier that address those issues and are included in the ordinance that we're here to vote on tonight. And I believe there were some more comments on changing those a little bit more, maybe to make them a little more specific, and I'll allow council members to make those changes or ask any questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Any council members have questions? Mr. Warner?
Mr. Thompson, you said that they're requesting a variance to reduce the space between the houses to 10 feet. That's from 15 feet to 10 feet, correct? So we're talking about a difference 2.5 feet per lot.
Right, and for some reason, the RHOP ordinance dictates 15 when the building standard now for probably the last 500 homes we built in Snellville has been 10. It's just, so it's just pretty much an industry standard at this point.
I know why, but we won't go there. And there are existing neighborhoods that are already built on that standard?
Yeah, we've, like I said, the one at Ridgedale and Pinehurst, Saddlebrook it's called now, is a senior development. It's gated and private, but doesn't offer the same amenity package, so it's more of a senior neighborhood, not necessarily a senior community. They were approved for that. Shadowbrook, not to be confused with Saddlebrook, is the new neighborhood behind East Side. There's 140 lots there with 10 feet. Stockton Walk is an older neighborhood, is 10 feet. Carrington is 10 feet. Old Hickory is 10. So basically the last probably 15 years, that's kind of been the trend as land prices go up in order to accommodate that. people want less yards, less maintenance, so they basically stack them in and then use green space as their yards.
Right, I just wanted to make sure that this wasn't something that hasn't already been going on. You also mentioned RHOP was actually written as a quadruplex and duplex ordinance, and this is single-family houses, correct?
Right. The RHOP ordinance, a little history, was originally written for where Shadowbrook kind of is now behind the hospital as a multi-facility senior-type living facility where you have assisted living, senior housing, detached, attached, and more of a campus type environment, and then each individual use was also broke down. So in this application, we're only applying the standards for single-family homes, which in the broader sense of a broader development was only a small percentage of the units, where here it represents 100%.
Okay, and just one more thing. You mentioned the upgrade of an existing pond. One of the issues that had come up with the homeowners that I've seen over the last 15, 20 years is siltation in Upper Johnson Lake. And would that additional pond between that is upgraded in order to hold more water, would that not stop some of that siltation?
Yeah, it's basically just allowing one more filter before it goes down for the sediment to settle. It becomes a maintenance issue, just like with everything else. You have to keep it clean, and oftentimes you have to dredge these over time. But allowing the water to stop there before it goes on will definitely aid in siltation.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes the question portion that I had.
Any other council members wish to question Mr. Thompson?
Mr. Thompson, I just wanted you to clarify for me, to be sure that I have this straight in my mind. You talked about the 6-foot wooden privacy fence that will be constructed from lots 121 to 144, and that will be constructed in the initial phase of the development to screen those existing residential properties. But it's also my understanding that the developer has said that eventually the entire development will have a privacy fence, correct?
From what I understand, and you can ask the applicant as well, is that part of the amenity of that kind of neighborhood is security, and that every home comes with a fence. The difference is, from what I understand, is there's 3 choices for your back fence line and your side fence line. I'm sure it's a dog ear, a up and down, I don't know what you call that one, but in order for it to be continuous and down that whole line, the developer has basically going to put in one type of fence for no choice so that it looks the same. You're not looking at 4 different fence panels where it matters most, where it's adjacent to those existing residential. And but the rest of the development will have a fence, but it'll be built on basis as the lots are developed, which is typical. Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions for Mr. Thompson?
Yes, we have an addition that says all trees located within the 25-foot exterior buffer having a caliper of at least 6 inches shall be preserved subject to the discretion of the planning director.
Yes, sir.
How is your discretion these days?
Basically, how that's applied is you don't want to come in and just mark a 6-inch tree and say we're going to keep that just because it's a 6-inch tree. A lot of times the tree may be unhealthy. It may be an undesired species. It could be, many things. It could be a Virginia pine. It could be 12 inches and have 2 branches on it. It doesn't serve a purpose in a buffer. So typically what we would do is have the applicant, as part of their LDP, submit a tree survey where they'll have to mark every tree over 6 inches in that buffer area. And then we'll go out and locate them and see, we'll use an arborist to determine, is that going to be helpful or harmful to the buffer, and then make those calls based on professional guidance during the development process.
And also, I believe we had discussed adding some lower growing shrubs to that 25-foot buffer.
Where sparsely vegetated, it won't stop with shrubs. I mean, most of the buffer will probably be planted with evergreen trees, fast-growing, your favorite tree, the Leland cypress. There's plenty, green giant arborvitaes. There's all kinds of different ones you can use to kind of change up the appearance, but the evergreens really grow fast. They grow dense, and if planted with the correct spacing, they'll be there for a long time.
But the ultimate goal is to have a natural screening so that
Yes,
ultimately,
a planted screen with whatever trees that are there will enhance the buffer and not detract from it.
Anyone else for Mr. Thompson? Thank you, Mr. Thompson. And is the applicant here? If you'd like to come up and let us know what you would like to know.
For the record, my name is John Gaskin. I'm Vice President with Patrick Malloy Companies. And I think this is probably the 6th public or semi-public presentation we've had regarding this project. So I'll spare you another trip through the intimacy of this development and so forth, unless there's some more specific questions that Jason wasn't able to answer that I can answer as developer. We've seen the conditions in the amended conditions, I suppose you can call them that we offered today, or actually over the weekend in response to these buffer and stormwater issues. We're in agreement with all of those conditions, and right now we're perfectly satisfied as the recommendation of planning staff. So I'm here to answer any questions. If you'd like, I can give a brief presentation of the project if there are people who are here who haven't seen it. But otherwise, I'll spare us all the time and let any opposition take from here.
Anyone with questions?
Just for the record, what's the approximate price point on the properties?
Okay, we did have very extensive market study done by a specialist in this type of community, meaning age-restricted. So the price points that they have come up with within this community, the thing that's unusual about this type of community is it draws people from all over. It's not necessarily just people that maybe work in the area. So specifically, the price points, the lowest price point was $333,000. The next price point up was $363,000, and I think $443,000 was the top price point of the biggest product in here. And that's pretty much in line with another age-restricted community that we're modeling this one after. We've actually, the price points have exceeded that, what I've mentioned. That's kind of a base price point. But in that community up in Canton, we're now mid-3s to 500s. But we'll start here a little bit lower and then hopefully move up as the market demands.
Anyone else, council members, with questions for Mr. Gaskin? No? Thank you, Mr. Gaskin.
Okay, thank you.
This is a public hearing, so I will open the floor to public comment. Anyone here, there's a lot of people in the room, I don't know where we are with for or against, so let's do this in stages. Anyone here to speak in opposition for the project, please come forward and give your name and address for the record.
I'm Gus May. I live at 3317 Classic Drive. I'm against it. Johnson Lake cannot take any more water. I mean, you're going to put more water in Johnson Lake. We already have a problem with the dam. And traffic is going to be bad on Rosebud. I mean, are they going to, improve Rosebud Road, widen the road? Because, once school starts, it's just going to be terrible. So I'm totally against it.
Thank you, Mr. May.
Good afternoon. My name is Ann Crace. I live at 3399 Summit Turf Lane, which is on the corner of Rosebud and Summit Turf. So the houses will back up to my back door. I'm thoroughly opposed to it. I came from a small town, Cotton Town, had a village with tract houses. To me, that's what these are going to look like. They're just going to be made differently. They'll be more enhanced than what tract houses are. But I already have a drainage problem from the golf course. But I never thought I'd have to look at the back end of somebody else's house. I've never had to do that with all the homes I've owned. I am a senior. We've got some coming on 78 before you get to Summit Chase that are going to start in the 200s, or that's what the sign says, I think. These are going to be 3 to 5. Who's going to pay $3,000 or $33,000, when they can get one for $2? I sit on my back porch and look out on that golf course, and it's beautiful. And the golf course could actually be made public, and it would make a lot of money instead of being private. I was concerned about a buffer. And now that he said the cypress trees, that will be close together and block that. I never thought I'd have to look at a forest, either when I bought my house. But I don't know whether it's going to devalue my property, which I think it's going to. So I'm just, and the traffic is going to be bad. It's already bad. I get up every morning, and I'm 79 years old. I get up every day and go somewhere. So don't tell me those people ain't going to get up and get out on the road, because they are. So I don't know. Like I say, I bought my house for a golf course to sit on my back porch and look out at the green grass, not look out at a 6-foot fence and trees. So I thank you for your time and consideration. But just think, if it were you, would you want this in your backyard? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Pat Raisler, and I live at 3388 Summit Turf Lane. And I'm not speaking so much as in opposition as I am, I guess, seeking additional information. As you can imagine, in our neighborhood, there's a lot of hearsay going around. And so there's some questions that I have and some concerns that I have from what has been said today. One of the biggest concerns I have is that just on the other side of Temple Johnson, there's a subdivision, and the houses there are close together. And a couple years ago, there was a fire. And the fire in one house burned another house and burned another house. So I'm concerned about when you put houses too close together, that sometimes disasters occur. So if we're going to put housing close together, then I think we need to be very careful about what we require in the way of either fire breaks or more fireproof materials. That's one of the concerns that I have. And also, I mean, you're dealing with a senior community. If it were ever important, it would seem like that would be one of the communities we'd really want to protect that. And then I have a question of what happens if these 257 plus houses, and they sound like they would be nice, but what happens if the market doesn't bear and they don't sell? Will those houses then be rezoned? Will you rezone the property so that it becomes, a general family thing? Are we going to be changing that? So I'm curious to know about that. And that's the biggest thing. It's like, I know it's going to change, and I understand the golf course has already been sold, and I understand it's already been purchased, but I'm not quite ready to give it a seal of approval yet. I think there's some things that need to really be considered. And I also would like to know, what are the anticipated start dates and finish dates? Because whereas Ann, who just spoke, is on the golf course, I live across from the golf course. So I can just imagine, I mean, it's construction. When do I go away for a month? So I think the residents ought to know that kind of thing too. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And we'll have those concerns addressed either by the applicant or Mr. Thompson once we get all the issues or questions.
Good evening. My name is Jeanette Fowler. My address is 3482 Rosebud Road. I'm not exactly opposed to the development. I do have some concerns, however, because my house is going to be 6 houses left on that corner of Rosebud Road and Temple Johnson, and I'm one of them. So I'm concerned that my property is right up against this property with these houses. And like the young lady, the lady before me was saying, I'm concerned about, I like looking out my back door and seeing all that greenery and all those green trees. And I'm not going to be able to see that anymore. So I'm concerned, are they going to stick with this development, or are they going to, is my house in danger of being sold, or do I have to, are they going to do something with these 6 houses that's left? Because I'm trying to upgrade my own house, and I need to know whether this development is going to affect me in the future, in the near future. Because they could, if they have some variance, they could decide that they want those other 6 houses, the 3 on Rosebud Road and the 3 on Temple Johnson. It's just 6 houses left on that corner. So I'm concerned what is going to happen to these 6 houses. Thank you.
Ms. Fowler, the short answer on that one is your property won't get sold unless you agree to sell it. So for that one, but we'll have the applicant also address some of your other concerns.
Robert Buckner, 3021 Alta Ridge Way in Snellville. I'm not opposed. I would just like to know what are the 18 holes of the golf course that are being sold, and what are the 9 holes that are going to remain? Is that an easy question?
It is. There's 9 holes that are being sold, and 9 holes that will remain. It's only an 18-hole golf course.
Oh, my paper said 27.
I know. There was an error in the paper.
Okay. So
And it may have I heard that it stemmed from an error in the initial planning department report. I'm not sure where it came from, but there was an error there. Yeah, but no, I know the club had gotten inundated with calls. Everybody wanted to know where those other 9 holes were.
Right.
But it is a 9-hole golf course, so it's the front 9 of the course that is under this proposal.
The existing hole numbers are what?
1 through 9. The holes that would back up more to your house are 10 through 18.
So this
This development is not touching that area. Okay. Okay, so is there anyone that would like to speak that is for the project? Please come forward and give your name and address for the record.
Dathan Hammer, 4456 Marjorie Road. I represent South Gwinnett Baptist Church. We're all for them to come move in close to the church and come to church. The one question we have that I think others may have as well is, as you start constructing, can you put up a barrier quick? We're going to see a lot of dirt and other stuff. Interested in the dates as well. I'm for it.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Louisa Pollard, 1535 Timberline Trace. I'm neither against or for. I just have some concerns that I would like to. As you have seen, Snellville is growing by leaps and bounds. We have several developments, new developments that are starting, as well as the new facilities for 55 plus, and that includes 3 if we include this one. As you know, there is a lot of traffic, a lot of density. I would like to hear from this council, either today or at a future day, what amenities are you bringing in? Okay, there is senior communities that are being built of a certain level income. What infrastructure do you have in place for entertainment? What is the future plan for us to absorb these 500-plus houses or more that are going to come into the community? I read judiciously the Snellville Gazette magazine, and I see a little bit here and there. I see a lot of fast food places coming up. But if we're talking about that price point, that kind of community will certainly not be interested in the McDonald's or Burger Kings. What are our plans for the future for us serving this community? Maybe you have some in mind, but if they are in our community, I haven't heard that, and that it's going to generate a lot of traffic. What you believe my expertise is this particular community, and it's not what you think. They don't stay at home. They've new 55. The 65 is what it used to be considered the new 55. That's whatever you have in mind. It's not what is going to happen. I come from the Washington D.C. area, and we saw huge changes when these communities came into place, and I haven't seen nothing forecasting for the future on what are our plans. For this community is self-sustaining. But the one besides East Side is not going to be that self-sustaining. It's going to be an open community. And the one that is across from us, which is the new one on 78, that is not a closed community. So I would like to hear what is your thinking and what is the thought and what kind of restaurants and things are you going to have in place for the new incomers and the community that is already living here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Hello, my name is LaShante Derizay. I live at 3296 Classic Drive. I'm on the board of the HOA for, where do I live? Summit Chase, sorry. We do believe this is the best use for the land. We certainly don't want less expensive property being built or houses being built that would hurt our property values. But we definitely want to make sure that the proper precaution is used or given towards the traffic and the water runoff. Our dam cannot take anymore. We simply can't. We need lots of help as is to make improvements to it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
What are you snickering for? Y'all called the party, not me. Oh, I got the invite. Bobby Howard, 2240 Pinehurst Road, Snellville, Georgia. First and foremost, I don't live in that area, but I want to commend the council, the planning commission, and everybody involved in making sure that this development is good for the city of Snellville. And I just personally want to thank the Brits. For over 40 years in this community, they have poured their heart out in it. And I don't think anything the Brits would do would ever harm the city of Snellville in any way, shape, or form. And I just felt like I needed to say that because I've sat in those seats and I understand where y'all, I get it better than most. But I just wanted to make sure that I said thank you for y'all's attention, the board's commission, and attention to making sure this is the best and finest thing that we can do for our city. And from everything I've seen and read, it certainly looks like it is. And to the Britt family, thank you for the over 40 years you've spent in this city and pouring out your heart.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. And if there's not anyone else, then we will close the public hearing. Is there anyone else that wants to come up real quick? Yes, I was going to allow you to respond.
Name is Gabriel Collier, 580 Johns Landing Way in Lawrenceville. I serve on the Gwinnett County Planning Commission, and I am always in favor of senior developments. We're all heading there, and we need a lot of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. And with that, I will close the public hearing and give an opportunity for, who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
Mr. Thompson will address some of the concerns that may regard some of the technical issues.
And I'll just go down the list. I've got several, and I'll leave the construction timeline to the applicant and any future plans they may have for additional properties. But most of the concerns seem to rest on the stormwater issue. And what we're doing here is a land use and a zoning decision that we would do for any other applicant that brought forward an application. Like I said, as part of that application, even if you approve this rezoning, you approve the land use amendment, and they've got to go, if they can't solve the stormwater puzzle, which is what the engineers do, make sure it holds the water. And part of the code prescribes that you cannot allow the water to leave any faster than it's leaving right now, so it cannot technically get worse. And most of the time, through these improvements, I mean, you've got golf cart paths over there, you've got rudimentary stormwater facilities that are there, that have been there for a long time. You're going to bring in a code that is much more stringent than it was 30 or 40 years ago and requires a lot of retention. So more than likely, there's a high percentage that the water going to those troublesome areas will be reduced, and it will be treated for water quality, which means cleanliness, and then the volume, how fast it goes, the flow. That's the issue here, is how fast is it going to get to the lake? Is it going to topple the dam? Is it going to destroy the dam? And if they can't solve that question, it doesn't matter if they've got the zoning from you guys, they don't get a permit. And that comes straight down from it starts in the federal government down to the Georgia EPD, trickles down to Gwinnett, and then ultimately Snellville, who enforces those through the plan review and permitting process. So those issues I would forecast would get better and not worse. And I understand the concerns there. I've been here. I was here for the Lower Johnson Lake event, and some of the other issues that we've dealt with over there. So the city has been there and understands those, and I don't believe that'll be a long-term issue. It actually will be somewhat of a solution. Now the traffic, there's no doubt traffic will increase. You build homes, there's going to be more people, but Gwinnett County Transportation just rolled out a transportation master plan. Those are their roads, and just like the school system, they have to accommodate for growth, and they have a 20 to 30 year plan. They expand the roads as they get more volume. There will be there may be a center turn lane here at this development. I'm not sure yet. They have to run the traffic counts, but even though the people will be there, and there will be seniors, and they're not operating mostly at peak times. Study after study has shown that they're non-peak hours. There'll be more cars, but they're not going to be 7 to 9 most of the time. And they, you know, if I could avoid the traffic, I certainly would. I'd wait a little bit later. And some will still work, but the majority will be retired and enjoying the facilities and the amenities. So as far as a traffic standpoint, there's no legal precedence that allows us to basically close the door behind us and deny zonings and land use decisions based on traffic. The property owner also has a right to develop their property if it's within the codes and the ordinances to the highest and best use, and traffic is not considered one of the major factors, because that's going to continue. Gwinnett's basically proposed to double in population in only 30 to 35 years. That's a lot of people. People have to have places to live. The roads will have to be built to accommodate those. And at some point, all of those homes were pastures and farms, as far as the eye can see in Snellville. And it's not unique to Snellville or any other suburban community. It's just as the population increases, we have to provide housing. And I would hope that we could provide that within the city where we can control that. Another thing is, right now, the properties zoned RS-180, they could build properties. They'd be a little larger lots, but there'd be, let's say, 180 open age lots, which would probably account for at least, if not more, traffic, schools, buses, all those things which you're not going to find there. So while traffic is a concern, it's not one that we don't consider, but it's not one that totally guides land use decisions, because traffic is going to be an issue wherever people are until, they figure out some alternate modes of transportation, which everyone's working towards. So just in regards to the infrastructure and the entertainment environment, I know the city is actively about to complete a final deal to get the town center up and running. There's going to be ample opportunities for unique eateries and retail spaces to accommodate this new influx of citizens, but let it also be known that these developments are coming here without the promise of that. They're coming for what Snellville already has, which is a robust community, a diverse community, and other opportunities on 124 and at Briscoe Park and other places to enjoy your time. That's without the town center, but I believe that will be a huge boon for the new residents and existing residents. So just trying to start back on, I'll start at number one, the cluster homes. The concern about fire safety is that the requirement of those homes are built based on the state of Georgia residential codes. If there's a certain distance, they have to have certain fire-rated walls on those exterior walls. So once they become too close, they have to up the sheetrock and the fire protection. So that's built into every building permit that's reviewed and approved based on meeting the state codes. So luckily, we haven't had any issues with any kind of fire safety. If the 257 homes are, typically they don't build them all at once either. If they get a couple phases in and things aren't moving the way they want them to move, if they wanted to do anything to change the proposal, if approved here tonight, they would have to come back before the mayor and council, the planning commission, notification would be sent, and we'd do this whole process again and see where we're at that time. Based on the applicant's history with almost 1,000 units in Canton, they feel like this market would be well served. Start dates and finish dates, I'll defer to the applicant. And with the 6 houses left as well, if the applicant has any future plans, they would certainly let the homeowners know and would have to purchase those. And then the first 9 holes, I think, were answered, and I don't believe there were any that I missed. Is there anything else?
I think I had. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Gaskin, would you like to come up and explain anything else that was left?
And I'm going to blame our secretary about the 18-hole issue. When she first wrote the description up, put it in the file, she thought there was 27 holes. So I
thought Jason would have known better, but.
In the first meeting, I about gave Don a heart attack because it was in front of the golf membership and so forth, and they assumed the whole golf course was up. But definitely only 9 of the 18 holes. Matter of fact, that's part of the appeal to us is, in addition to the big amenity, we're having a 3-acre amenity, a 10,000 square foot clubhouse, which essentially is the heartbeat of this community, as you guys have seen before. And all the other amenity facilities, we are going to offer memberships to the social memberships and golf memberships to the remaining 9 holes. And we actually have a golf cart connection between our community and the golf facility. And there's the tunnel that's underneath Rosebud golf cart tunnel will stay in place so that somebody on the furthest lot can get in a golf cart. These are private streets and never have to leave the community to go play golf. So it's a fantastic amenity for us, and I think it helps Summit Chase as well. So that helps maintain a business that was here and I think it's just going to further strengthen it. You will see a bit regarding one of the, I'll get specifically into the timing and phasing, but in terms of the impact on the market, these buyers typically are higher income type buyers, but a lot of these purchases are equity type purchases, and what I mean by that, somebody's lived in their house for 30 years or so. It's time to move down in size and, do something that's a little more modern but more appropriate in terms of square footage. They'll typically sell their house and just take that money and put it into these houses. So for $350,000 sounds like that's a high price, but typically around Atlanta, $350,000 is a kind of a medium price point type house. It's not, somebody who's just incredibly wealthy. So from a market perspective, it's not like we're having to draw just absolutely the wealthiest type people in these communities. But they do tend to, some of them still work. I think 10% of the 10 to 15% of the people in our big community in Canton still work in some capacity. And that doesn't mean getting in the car and go somewhere, but they do, some of their work is travel through the airport, but a lot of it is work at home. So I don't think you're going to see a tremendous amount of traffic over and above historically what an age-restricted type community like this would produce. But again, the bigger market input in terms of Snellville, one of the attractiveness, when we look at, I'm looking at buying 4 properties around Atlanta to do something similar to this. Always like a unique small town, which Snellville has. There's got to be some conveniences close by in terms of some sort of shopping and restaurants. And I think you'll see that this will have some sort of impact where you'll start to see a little bit more restaurants and demand for that type of thing, a more leisurely type commercial. But the other thing is hospitals and closest to family and so forth. So this site fit every aspect from a market perspective. So I think in terms of timing, in terms of the market, in terms of moving through this community, if we have a severe down recession again and so forth, I can't guarantee against that. But typically the community that you saw in Canton, we sell about 6 homes a month. We took 14 contracts last month, and we're just about out of that community. So what happens is this community gets momentum, and hopefully we get that kind of momentum here, and we think we've done a lot of marketing studies. We think that you'll start to see some dirt move, so to speak, or some silt fence and stuff go up toward the end of the summer. Typically, this is about we will develop it in phases. Most of the lots, the phases will be probably 50 to 70 lots. This is a 4-year development project, and we think we'll be sold out in 5 years. So a lot of the pace of the development will be depending on the sale of the homes, and we try to stay just enough developed lots ahead of the sale. But the sales pace is really pretty quickly, so I think this will be in and out relatively quickly, so that fears of having to go through a downturn or a recession maybe is not as important here as if this was traditional type family housing. And again, this is the type of buyer who has the means to buy these type of houses. Less than 50% of these houses have a loan on them. It's a lot of cash purchases, so you're not having to qualify for loans and go through that process. So it's a little bit shielded from a recession in that regard. Regarding the 6 houses down at the corner, I've not been approached about buying any of those properties. I'm always open to, our business is to buy property, develop, and so forth. If that were ever presented to us, obviously we'd have to come back and rezone that. But at this point, I have no plans for those properties, nor have I been presented any sort of contracts or potential purchase contracts. I think that's pretty much everything I had on my list, unless I missed something. If I did, I'll certainly address it.
I think you got everything on my list.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you, sir. And now I will entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to, if I can find my agenda so I read the right stuff this time, to approve LUP 19-01, land use plan amendment for consideration changing Snellville 2040 comprehensive land use plan map from park and recreation to residential low density.
Okay, there's a motion to approve the LUP 19-01. Is there a second?
Second.
And for the audience, we do have two things that's being changed here. The first is the land use plan map, and that's being done first as a separate vote, and then we will go to the rezoning. So we have a motion to approve the land use plan amendment and a second. All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. That is 6 in favor and none opposed.
And Mayor, I would further like to make a motion to approve RZ 19-02 consideration and action on the application by Patrick Malloy Companies LLC and Summit Chase Country Club to, got to make sure I skip the right part, change the official zoning map amendment from LM Light Manufacturing District and RS 180 Single Family Resident District to RHOP 55 Single Family Housing for Older Persons District and variances for a 257 lot age-restricted single-family detached subdivision on 75.288 acres, site located near the intersection of Rosebud and Temple Johnson Road in Loganville. The variances and conditions that I will attach to this motion are the same as are in our packet, with the exception of number 16, which shall be, again, I have to read my writing, so as part of the site stormwater mitigation plan, the developer at the earliest opportunity shall be responsible for improving the drainage structure and freeboard storage capacity of the small off-site pond lying just north of the property to provide additional stormwater protection. If you would like me to, I'll be happy to read all the conditions that are here, since many of the audience hasn't seen them, but
Mr. Warner, I would appreciate if you would read any of the amendments or the conditions that have been proposed since the Planning Commission meeting.
well,
So that the public is aware of what it is.
if I can get my tablet to listen to me, I will. But sometime our system is not as fast. So y'all get off your phones for a minute, Joe, and then maybe, thank you, here we go. All right.
If you can see red print, you can read.
Well, if I can see it all. Number 14, the developer shall be required to build a 6-foot wooden privacy fence consisting of the same material and design, the entire length of the fence running from lots 121 to 144, shown on the zoning plan along the eastern side of the property line. The privacy fence shall be in place at the time of the issuance of the first final plat. 15, lots 240 and 241, as shown on the zoning plan, shall be reoriented so that the cul-de-sac shall be shortened and lots 240 and 241 shall back up to the 25-foot buffer as opposed to being oriented sideways to it. Already read 16. 17 is the 25-foot exterior buffer requirement along the northern portion of the property where the site is adjacent to Summit Chase Country Club Golf Course shall be removed, and a normal rear yard setback against the common property line shall be required instead. Number 18, all trees located within the 25-foot exterior buffer having a caliper of at least 6 inches per standard measuring shall be preserved, subject to the discretion of the planning director. And number 19, additional plantings shall be required in the 25-foot exterior buffer where sparsely vegetated per the discretion of the planning director. And then there's the word "and," but I don't have anything after that, so I'll assume that it's "and" period.
The "and" is, there's so number 20, non-substantial variances.
Oh, well, that wasn't in red. Non-substantial variances as determined by the Director of Planning and Development or the City Manager for the design requirements, zoning requirements, development regulations, and construction requirements must be submitted in writing for administrative approval with the Director of Planning and Development.
Second.
Okay, do I get to go on my speech now?
Yes, if, we have a motion and a second, if any council members would like to opine.
Okay, some of the questions that came up specifically were dealing with stormwater or runoff from the golf course onto their property. The way the development regs work, regulations work, actually they will have to slope the land such that any water that falls on what is now commonly called the golf course will have to run onto their property. It will no longer run onto your property. That's one of the nice changes of this. The other thing is, having been a member of Summit Chase community for 20-some years now, I understand the issues, and I have spoken to our city engineer on numerous occasions. I made sure that City Council, we spoke to the city engineer as a whole to make sure that the drainage issues were taken care of. That's one of the reasons why number 16 is in there, and that is to make sure that there is another catch basin between this property and us that will catch that stormwater, catch the silt, catch any trash before it comes down into Johnson Lake. Currently, whenever we get one of those gully washer rains like we had this last weekend, I think the mayor said we had over 4 inches on Saturday. Once that ground gets saturated, every drop that falls runs straight into the lake and overburdens it. This will give us another catch basin that's actually going to catch some of that water. So when we have the intense rainfall like we did 6 weeks ago, or the intense rainfall that we had this weekend, it will slow that water moving into our lake, giving our dams time to recover. It's not going to keep the water away from those lakes, because that's a concern of mine also. It's just going to make sure that we don't have those egregious overburdens where the water comes within 8 inches of the top of Lower Johnson Dam. And I'll stop at that.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Anyone else with the threat of Councilwoman Linsky throwing a pen at you?
Does she want to go first?
No, she wants you to be quick.
Oh. I just want to say that this development literally is in my backyard, and we back up to a portion of it. And sure, I'd like to see it stay a golf course, but again, this gets down to property owner rights. It is currently zoned RS 180, so we could say no to this, and they could build RS 180 homes in there, and we'd still have something in place of the golf course. But again, this is a property owner right, and I think it's going to be a valuable addition to our community.
Anyone else? With that, we will take the vote. All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. That is 6 in favor and none opposed. It's approved. Now, for those who don't have meeting fatigue, I'm sorry, my council members are wearing out. We typically, the last year or two, they've been spoiled because we get out before 9 o'clock. But we do have 2 items on our agenda. It's fine if you want to leave, if you could just move quietly so that we could go ahead and finish up our meeting. Christy's not allowed to leave. Next, we have new business, item A, second reading, ordinance 2019-08, adoption of the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget for each fund of the City of Snellville, Georgia, appropriating the amount shown in each budget as expenditures, expenses. adopting the several items of revenue anticipations, and prohibiting expenditures or expenses from exceeding the actual funding available. Mr. Sanders, there's nobody left to talk to, but if you'd like to give us an update on the budget.
In the interest of brevity, I and the staff are recommending a balanced budget, approval of a balanced budget, general operating fund balanced budget of $12,643,672. I think we have some information back in the back for people to look at, and we'll be glad to answer questions. Some of the main points, this budget projects maintaining the current millage rate, which we'll address at the end of June and the first meeting in July. And the changes that we've made between the first and the second reading actually reduced the budget by some $200,000 by moving some money around, renegotiating a master plan update for Briscoe Park, and doing some negotiations on sanitation fees. So I am proposing the approval of such budget.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. Does anyone want to comment on the budget, or you can make a motion?
Motion to approve such budget.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the budget. With that, all in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. That is 6 in favor and none opposed. I'm just not used to the budget going this quick. Next, we have item B, consideration and action on approval of the city manager contract. Mr. Sanders works under a contract that does not hire or fire him. The mayor and council do that, but we do have a contract that sets the terms of his employment as far as salary and benefits and things like that. His contract had expired, and so we did an annual review for him, and we have come to terms on a new contract, which basically mirror the old contract. It continues on with his annual increase, and then cleans up a little bit of other language in the contract for him. So unless there's other people that want to say something, I will take a motion.
Motion to approve the city manager contract.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. That is 6 in favor and none opposed. Now we'll have council reports. Councilmember Warner. I'm sorry, we will not allow outbursts from the gallery.
Love you all. Thanks for coming out. Kurt left, so my job is done.
Councilmember Marmol? No. Councilmember Linsky?
Just wanted to remind everyone that we will not have a June 24th meeting, as we will be in Savannah for our annual conference, so we're looking forward to that.
I just want to very quickly point out that the Snellville Farmers Market did not break its record on Saturday for not having a market. We were very drenched, very wet, but we had a market. And our produce farmers that came thanked us for sticking it out.
Mayor Pro Tem Emanuel.
I just have to compliment Butch Sanders. He's been an exceptional city manager. We give him a hard time a lot of times, but I don't know when he sleeps. I've seen emails from him at 6 in the morning, and I've called him at 10 at night, and he's always there, always answering questions, and I just think we need to give him a round of applause for just doing an exceptional job.
And I was going to say almost the same thing. I would like to, with approving his contract, and we did his evaluation, I told Butch when we sat down that I had to work really, really hard to talk the council out of firing him. Wanted to set the tone properly before we started negotiations on a new contract. But he really has done a phenomenal job. He is, at his city managers, I mean, he just goes above and beyond. I know I've called him, I got a message from a citizen, it was on a Sunday, that a mattress had been thrown out on the side of the road right in front of the subdivision. He went out there that day and moved it off the road far enough until Public Works could get by there on the Monday to pick it up. But he is always doing those things. He loves to talk to residents. There is no conflict in him. There's always a way to work things out. Always willing to talk to people. If there's a problem, he picks up the phone or he knocks on somebody's door. And he really has been instrumental in getting us as far as we have on the town center, although we're not shoveling dirt yet. So we are.
We will be.
We are still working on that, but he has worked tirelessly for this city since he's been here, and I really do appreciate all his efforts. We have, unfortunately, had a few events rained out this weekend, and we have our rain gauge, we're over 6 inches for Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, and 2 inches of that came within 20 minutes on Saturday morning. Yeah, yes, you were. I was home barely able to see the street. But there is a lot going on in the city. We appreciate all the citizens and the residents who come out and support. And the woman that came up and asked about the amenities, she's a neighbor of mine. She lives on Timberline. I've got to go knock on her door because I could talk to her for quite a few hours about what we have to offer here in the city. But I won't go into that with all of you because most of you know that here. So that's the mayor's report, so we will open the floor to public comment. If anyone dares to see Ms. Linsky's wrath. Come on up, Brandon.
I know. I'm going to keep it really, really short. So Brandon Honslick, 2194 North Road here in Snellville. And just a couple things on the hotel ordinances. Number one, if we could go to 50 square feet, that would allow a family like mine with 2 adults and 4 kids to be able to stay in one room. I think that's fair and reasonable. Then the other one would just be instead of 48 hours of cleaning, 72 hours. So there was no requirement before. I know we want to make sure that there's people getting in those rooms. I think 72 hours would be a bit more reasonable. That's all. Leave it short. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Howard.
Christy. It's a good thing. Bobby Howard, 2240 Pinehurst Road, Snellville, Georgia. I would be remiss if I didn't come up here and say thank you for what you have done to support our police department. I can certainly see by the budget you've done that, and I certainly appreciate what you have done and what I hope will continue to do, because I think we all acknowledge that our police department is beyond incredible, and what they do every day and what these men and women do all across our law enforcement spectrum deserve to be appreciated every day that they're out there helping protect us. Butch, congratulations. Welcome back. Barbara's not kidding. They were really But I have to ask, I cannot wait to see a $63,000 field mower. I was hoping that was a typo at like $6,300. I can't wait to see a $63,000 field mower. But thanks everybody for what you do.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. And on the note of public safety, we had our public safety night here on Tuesday night. Wednesday, the Gwinnett Municipal Association, we do a meeting every other month for all elected officials, city managers, and the meeting that we had Wednesday, we held at the Gwinnett County Police Training Facility on Winder Highway. It's really Highway 29. Up there in Lawrenceville. It's really an incredible facility, but Chief Ayers he had quite a few of the vehicles out for everybody to look at. it was a repeat of some of the things we did here in Snellville, but we did have a chance to honor Chief Ayers and all of the city police chiefs. They were invited, and we gave them special recognition for the things that they and their departments do in and around this county every day. But it was a great opportunity to interact with the county police. We did meet all of the precinct commanders for Gwinnett County Police around the county, and so it was a really great meeting, a great opportunity to interact with everybody. With that, I will take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
There's a motion.
Second.
And a second. All in favor? That's 6-0. Thank you all for coming out and hanging with us. It's 9:30.